Stage. Guys, please welcome. Hello, Rahul. Stage is yours.
Good morning, Singapore. How's everyone doing?
Please
Hungry?
tell.
Well, I can talk about how I used my knowledge of IoT as a competitive advantage against my wife. I think what we would find more fascinating is how the new generation companies in Silicon Valley are using connectivity as a competitive advantage. While this conference has been about how to connect the real world, I want to talk about how the new generation companies are thinking of connectivity. Before that, who are you talking to? I started my career building stuff to then marketing technology, to consulting about technology, and then selling tech, and had a tech startup, and have been partnering with various companies on technology. And I sit on some boards of companies in Silicon Valley as well. So to talk about how a new generation company is using connectivity as a competitive advantage, I want to talk about the company. I'm going to use Uber as an example today. What are the business challenges? And what does connectivity mean for a company like Uber? And how we are thinking about using connectivity as a competitive advantage. So about Uber. So every year we do close to 2 billion trips and still growing at around 31% as a company. Our core business, which is around 76% of Uber revenue, which is a rides business, is growing at 23% year-on-year net revenue. Our Eats business is doubling itself every year. Food delivery is growing faster than rides business because I guess taxi industry, food delivery is not that regulated. We have around 103 million monthly active customers using our platforms. We have around 4 million driver partners. To put it in perspective, these are more number of people than People's Liberation Army of China and Walmart combined, the number of people looking for work on a monthly basis. We are present in 70 countries, 700 cities, around 27,000 employees worldwide, around 50,000 BPO agents. If you have any fare questions, etc., these are people who are located in 25 countries who take your fare questions. Around 750 hubs. These are locations where if you're an Uber driver, you can sign up to be an Uber driver. We support around 1 million concurrent trips at any given point in time, and that's the infrastructure we are supporting. That translates to 200 trips every second. So that's the scale of operations that we support. What are some of the core product lines? UberX, this is the flagship product that competes with taxis around the world. Uber Pool, this is your typical ride sharing. This is the true ride sharing, taking carbon off the road, letting people share a car. Uber Select, this is the premium vehicle that you can get. Uber Black, you get a better car, you get a professional driver along with it. Uber XL for large family groups. SUV, this is the flagship product. You get a premium car, you get a professional driver, and you get a large vehicle as well. Uber Assist, this is specifically a product designed for disabled passengers around the world. It is actually legal for a lot of taxis to have a ramp that you can take a disabled passenger to. But for example, in cities like London, if you hail a cab, they don't stop for you if you're disabled because it's a hassle actually taking you inside the car. So Uber actually designed a product specifically for disabled passengers. Uber Pet, for pet lovers, how do you effectively take pets from point A to point B? So this product is live in many cities, including Mexico City and a few major cities in the world. Uber Lite, 3G and 4G connectivity is still not ubiquitous in a lot of parts of the world. So we have designed this app called Uber Lite for 2G markets. It works pretty well, very thin. The app size is around 2 megabytes, and it works in very poor connectivity areas as well. Uber for Business, we sell into your travel departments. You can, instead of expensing a ride, you just have to click your office profile, and it automatically goes into your expense management system. And you get a discount for signing up for Uber for Business. Uber Eats. Uber, until now, has been in the business of people moving people. Now, we built a network of 3 to 4 million people, and we said, what else can we do? We said, maybe we can have people move not just people, but things as well. And then we said, maybe we can have them move food orders as well. So and this business is growing pretty significantly. As I mentioned, it's not heavily as regulated as taxi industries. Uber Freight, what other things can you move? In America, if you bought a thing from any of the big retailers like Walmart or Target, it probably reached to that shelf using a freight truck. And in America, like other parts of the world, the freight industry is 4 times bigger than the commuter transportation industry. So it's a huge market that still works very manually, people having to call each other up, the middleman taking a lot of money. So Uber is in the business of how to optimize that trucker-shipper experience. And we just launched into Canada and Europe as well. Uber Health. 1/4 of all American healthcare appointments are canceled because patients don't have a way to get from the hospital from their home to the hospital. And this is a problem that insurance companies are willing to pay for. So this is a HIPAA-compliant product that we give to hospitals so that they can actually call a ride for your parents. And the insurance companies will pay for it because prevention is better than cure. Autonomous vehicles, this is our bet to make driving more safer. After some of the natural causes of death like hypertension and malaria, driving is one of the biggest causes of death around the world. And how do you make life safer? And autonomous driving not only makes driving in the long run cheaper, but also much safer. So we bought a company called Jump. This is our foray into micro-mobility. So I live in San Francisco. So from downtown San Francisco to train station, it takes around 23 minutes on an Uber ride. If I take one of these bikes, which I can hail from my app, it takes half the time. So as cities get congested, these micro-mobility options are the way to dissipate the congestion in cities. So we are making a bet in that area as well. In lot of parts of the world, having a 4-wheeler to get to a place is not the right answer. We need 2-wheelers. And Uber motto is, for example, in many parts of Asia and Latin America, where it's much easier to actually have somebody pick you up in a bike rather than a car. We not only have people move food items, we are also now having people get the ingredients so that you can cook at home. We just bought a company that we're using as a platform to actually deliver groceries. Uber Money, one of the big issues that we have is most of the people that drive on Uber platform are not bankable. These are people coming from various, not from the rich part of the societies, and a lot of them are not eligible for a bank account. So what we did was partner with banks to actually get them bankable so that they can get into the banking system and onto other products. And one of the innovations that we did was, in the olden times, in feudal times, we used to get paid whenever the Lord used to get us paid. Then we moved to a monthly paycheck. In a lot of parts of Western world, you get bi-weekly paychecks. Uber then moved to a weekly paycheck, but now with the new product, you can actually instantly cash out after a ride. And that's a revolution in actually paying a gig economy worker because you really get paid for a job. So you're innovating on the payments front as well. Uber Chopper, this is live in few cities, including New York. If you want to go from Wall Street to JFK, it'll take you 15 minutes and $200. and it's a great option where it's a multimodal transportation. So you'll have a Uber car pick you up, take you to the helipad, the chopper will take you to the place where it lands, and then from there the car will be waiting to take you to JFK Airport. So you need to have multimodal transportation all coordinated within the same press of a button. We have Uber Boat, live in various places like Croatia and Lagos, Nigeria, where it's the same as calling an Uber, you can call an Uber Boat. We have drones. So now we moved from people moving people to people moving things. Now we said, can things move people? And the answer was yes. So then we put these bikes and scooters on the road, and these bikes and scooters carry people. And we said, okay, that's great that things can carry people. Can things carry things as well? And the answer was yes. And we said, can a drone carry Uber Eats delivery, so that we can automate that aspect as well. So we're doing some pilots on that front as well. We have Uber Elevate. So this is our answer to growing congestion in cities as well. As big cities grew, there was no place to grow except for up. That's why skyscrapers grew. And we feel that the more congested roads are going to become, the transportation options in those cities have to be elevated. And this is an option where these elevated vertical takeoff and landing objects can carry up to 4 people and move between city points in a seamless fashion. So essentially, that's what we're dealing with. And this is what we have to connect at Uber. So what does connectivity mean for a company like Uber, now that we stated what business challenges we have? So there are various forms of connectivity. And messaging is one of the key areas that we worry about, because it is still one of the best ways for us to reach a driver. These 4 million drivers who are driving around the world are on their cell phones, and the best way to reach is not email or other intrusive ways of reaching them. So we have SMS as one of the key mediums. We are one of the biggest senders of SMS in the world, because we reach our drivers, our 4 million drivers. We reach our 100+ million riders using promotions, transactional messages. We have one-time passwords. 95% of login attempt into Uber app is actually fraudulent. So how do we prevent the right people from actually using your Uber account? So we have to have verification mechanisms like one-time passwords that come on an SMS. We are one of the biggest enablers of communication after some of these big communication apps, because we enable communication between riders and drivers. And around 1/3 of every ride ends up in a contact. So we need to have an effective way for them to communicate between riders and drivers. And we figured out we are spending a lot of money actually masking that SMS between riders and drivers. We developed an app, in-app chat, where we could have them talk to each other and save that 90% of the cost. Uber is also one of the biggest consumers of voice in the market as well. People try to sign up to Uber with a landline phone number. As you know, we can't send a one-time password using SMS to a landline number, which means a huge drop-off happens because people sign up using landline numbers. And we figured out a way where we could actually send a voicemail to that landline number with the one-time password, so that they can use that to sign up into Uber, and hence converting that to people taking rides and then revenue. One of the big problems that Uber is trying to solve is safety. So we used to expose phone numbers of riders and drivers, and that was a problem because in a lot of parts of the world, some drivers used to actually take the phone numbers of these passengers, and especially female passengers, and harass them at the end of the trip. So we wanted to solve that problem by having those numbers masked. And even our competitors were advertising against us, saying that Uber is not safe because of this feature. So we actually worked with local providers in 70+ markets where we could anonymize these communications between riders and drivers. And then we ended up spending a lot of money actually powering these billions of calls between riders and drivers. And we said, we need a better way to manage this. And we actually developed a VoIP product within the app where you can press a button and call between riders and drivers, reducing 95% of the cost in actually having, so connectivity actually helping solve business objective and cost. We have operations in 70 plus countries, and we have drivers trying to call in to Uber, and we never used to allow them to call in. So if a driver had issues in getting paid, he or she used to put a ticket into Uber and wait for a few days to get a response, which was not acceptable. So we then powered it using toll-free numbers, and that really was expensive because toll-free numbers are expensive. So we actually went locally to 70 plus countries, got the local numbers so that drivers could call in. Now this is a problem because we only have opened up our phone lines to drivers, not to riders, because if the 100 million riders start calling in, that would really break our bank. So we are trying to work with the industry to have creative options to having some local phone numbers and toll-free numbers that can help solve that challenge, but cost effectively. The team also supports a whole array of contact center stacks for the 50,000 agents worldwide, from workforce management to automated call handling to contact center suites. How do you make sure these agents are advocates of the business when people call in and put a ticket in? One of the big problems that we had was drivers were signing up to be Uber drivers, but they were not driving. And we put a call center team together to call them up and say, hey, it looks like you signed up to be an Uber driver, but you're not driving. Can I help? Now, there was a big team doing this. Now, we partnered with the connectivity industry to make sure we have automated solutions that call the driver to remind, hence removing the manual effort to having call center teams call up drivers, because drivers are a critical part of our supply. So how the ride-hailing industry works is the more supply you have, the demand is proportional because you can reduce the cost and demand generally comes in. Uber does not have any hard phones for all the 700 offices that we have. We're completely VoIP, and we power these offices with super high-speed internet. Networks is the other component of what connectivity means for Uber. What we call Prime Network is what some people call production network. These supports the billion trips that 10 plus billion trips that we have done. These support the 1 million concurrent trips that we do, powered by 6 data centers, 10 POPs worldwide, which has the submarine connectivity, transatlantic, trans-Pacific connectivity that supports every ride. So every ride that happens around the world comes all the way back to our data centers in the US because our apps are pretty light compared to, let's say, YouTube or Facebook, but it's heavy dependence on videos. We have corporate network connecting 700 plus offices worldwide, separate network from our Prime network. We have hub. These are locations where you want to be a driver. You can go to this hub, and these are connected, and drivers can avail of internet. They can get a coffee. They can sign up to be an Uber driver. They can even get massage in some of these locations. We have autonomous car networks. So these are around 400 cars that we have in Pittsburgh, San Francisco, Toronto. So each of these cars, when they go out and take a trip for 4 or 5 hours, the amount of data that it actually produces is around 2 terabytes. So if I want to put that in context, if I multiply that by 400 cars that we have, multiplied by 20 days in a month, working days, that's the same amount of data the whole state of Hawaii consumes in a month in America. So you can do the math. If this becomes 3,000 cars or 30,000 or 300,000 cars, it just is a big data problem on the edge. We have contact center networks connecting 25 different countries, 50,000 agents using a separate network different from our production network. We peer with the key cloud companies, telcos. software companies, so that we can take traffic off of the internet and so that our app becomes faster. You can get your Uber sooner. We have some peak days at Uber. New Year's Eve, I guess people don't like to drink and drive on New Year's Eve. And Halloween, I guess people don't like to dress up and drive. So our network usage is around 4 to 5x compared to the other days. So now we're partnering with the industry to see how do we pay only for the bandwidth used during that peak season. So until we are as long as we are growing at 100% year on year, we are able to build in to get that capacity met in the following year. But it's not a sustainable model where you have peak traffic coming in. We have a separate IoT network. We have all these connected devices that I'm going to talk about, which might be of interest to you. But we do not want these on a public network. We have these traveling over private networks because you definitely don't want that IoT connection in your self-driving car hacked, and we need private connectivity on the network, even backhauling the IoT traffic. Wireless, we provide cell phones to 27,000 employees worldwide. We have field workers having internet on the go with MiFis. When we have new offices sometimes start, we have wireless connectivity that goes in before a fiber or copper connectivity comes in. In some parts of the world, Uber business is started in less than 4 weeks, because for us, replicating a business is not that hard. What happens is we hire a general manager hires operations manager whose job is to generate supply, so a minimum of, let's say, 50 drivers. And let's say the 50 drivers are there, the general manager hires a marketing manager whose job is to generate demand. So there's supply, there's demand, boom, a business is formed in less than 4 weeks. But an internet connection sometimes takes 6 to 9 months in an office. So how do we enable business to move fast and launch new offices? So we have wireless connectivity helping us out. IoT. This might be super interesting for you folks, because what does IoT really mean for a company like Uber? I call it IOMT, Internet of Moving Things. It's slightly different from connecting fields and connecting agri-businesses and connecting manufacturing plants. Slightly different challenges that come with it. So this is how a typical self-driving car looks like. So you can see on the top, that's the LiDAR unit that has video sensors, that has audio sensors, that has cameras, that also has 2 IoT modules from 2 different stacks of hardware and connectivity options. So these cars actually won't run without these IoT sensors, because how do you locate a car if the car is on? There's no driver to call. And these cars won't, once they start moving, they'll move. They'll keep moving, but once it stops, it won't start again without a proper IoT connection. So IoT is super important in the world of things moving people and things moving things. Now, what happens when we overlay 5G on top of this, this world of autonomous? Now, these self-driving cars are mini data centers on the wheels. You're processing 2 terabytes of data. Now, how it processes right now is it comes into a depot for cleaning, for service purposes. There's a 100 gig uplink cable that is connected into the car that goes all the way into our POPs and data centers. Now, with 5G, that promises less than 10 millisecond latency and broadband IoT possibilities. Can 80% of this data be processed on the edge? So instead of having a cluster of cars all transmit 2 terabytes of data back to our infrastructure, can, let's say, 70 to 80% of the data be done on the edge and only have 20% hauled back? So these are problems we're thinking about when you overlay IoT with 5G and autonomous vehicles. So if your autonomous vehicle looks like this, your self-driving car, how does each seat have a Netflix connection? How are you going to connect each of these seats with a Netflix connection? Is it going to be a separate IoT connection to each seat, or is it one big connection that comes, which is sliced via software-defined networks? So these are problems that people are thinking about as self-driving cars become closer to a reality. So this is a typical Uber freight truck. One of the big problems in a freight industry is that the idle time where the truck is waiting is something that is a loss for the shipper because they pay the drivers for just waiting. Now, what we did was we put some IoT solutions in the truck, and the waiting time reduced from 3 to 4 hours to around 1 to 2 hours because the dock actually got information about when the truck is arriving on a systematic basis. So IoT giving back monetary benefits back to the market. So this was a typical mapping vehicle. So these used to go around the world mapping roads in 80 plus countries on a 2D, 3D fashion. They used to have IoT modules on top of these cameras that used to send data back to our infrastructure, from which it used to be downloaded by our 3,000 agents who used to sit out of offshore locations, scrubbing this data, making maps. We use these maps in 30 plus cities right now, along with other maps. So IoT being a critical component and actually powering in ride-hailing companies, because mapping is a competitive advantage for companies like Uber. We have other areas where we do dashcam-based IoTs for law enforcement purposes. We do it for safety purposes, and IoT actually using this for transporting this data back to our infrastructure. We have in some of the Uber leased and owned cars OBD2 dongle-based IoT devices that transmit data back to our insurance companies to reduce our usage-based insurance. And Uber is one of the biggest insurers in America because it self-insures its rides. And we use the data that comes from some of these cars to reduce our insurance costs, which is one of the biggest costs on the line items. So this is how a typical restaurant kiosk looks like in the new restaurant age. Every food delivery apps give their own tablets because they don't want to compete with the real estate space of that desktop, and which means each of these tablets are crucial in delivering orders to the restaurants. Now, what happens if these connectivity is down in these restaurants? So no connectivity, no business. And Wi-Fi is ubiquitous in a lot of parts of the Western world, but not in a lot of developing markets. So what we did was we worked with the industry to have a pay-as-you-go model of embedded IoT chips in these tablets. When Wi-Fi goes down, these LTE picks up and keeps the business running. So IoT powering revenues when there's connectivity loss. These drones that are being tried for food delivery actually are IoT connected. Without these IoT connections, you can't really have these drones deliver. So now we're getting into things moving people. So these are all IoT connected bikes that you can see from your app, and GPS alone is not enough to actually connect these bikes. So we have plans to launch a couple of million bikes in the next few years. Now, all of these are IoT connected, and without a proper, good IoT connection, we really can't have unlocking, locking happen, battery percentages being reported back. So IoT being a critical component of launching a new business like this. Same story with bikes as well. These are IoT connected bikes. We have standards where what happens when I launch 2 million bikes around the world with a global IoT connectivity provider. What leverage do I have at the end of that 2 years when I'm renegotiating that contract? Probably none, because all my IoT connections are on that carrier. Now, there are technologies out there where you can actually over the air change your carrier if you want. I know this is a zero-G conference, but unfortunately for the Internet of moving things, you still need connectivity in places where it's not dense cities, which means you need to have ability to rely on cellular coverage and not purely depend on one carrier. So there are technologies like USEC that you should be using to think about connectivity. Now, how are we thinking about now these are all this is what connectivity means for a company like Uber. How do you think about using some of this connectivity as a competitive advantage? So I'll give you an example of India. So 7, 8 years ago, we were trying to launch a business in India, but it was not possible for us to launch because the smartphone penetration in India was pretty low. So no smartphone, no Uber, because the drivers cannot really use a medium to actually take the rides. Now, what we did was we partnered with the key telecom operator there, where we used to buy phones and give it out to drivers. So if I used to get it for $15, I used to give it out for $20, making money off of this, but more so opening up one of the biggest markets for us using connectivity and using these connectivity relationships. So turning that into a competitive advantage. So this is a self-reported coverage map of the top 4 carriers of US. Now, they do a lot of background work to find coverage, send fleets of trucks to actually get this coverage data. Now, Uber has 4 billion drivers driving around the world. We know and these are all from these different, they have cell phones from all these different carriers. We have cell phone data and cell handoff data of all these carriers. And now we can give this data back to the industry on a live API basis. So we are trying to use our connectivity and our network to provide data back to the industry and even monetize it as ancillary revenue generation opportunities. So turning connectivity network into a competitive advantage. We have technologies where for those of you who know the SMS world, one of the biggest problems in the SMS industry is deliverability, because carriers will not tell you that an SMS has been delivered. They'll only tell you that an SMS has been sent. Now, to tackle that problem, there are a lot of SMS testing networks. Now, there are technologies out there where if I embed this 2-line code in my app, for the 100 million phones that I have, I can easily tell whether an SMS has been delivered or not. And these are kind of technologies that, as a network, we can sell back to the industry, hence turning our network into our competitive advantage. We talked about this, which is how do you have IoT and connectivity in these restaurant kiosks, on these tablets, and make it a competitive advantage, hence powering revenues. In the end, I would urge all of you to rethink your business models as companies, and if you're selling into big corporations, to help them envision a cosmos, a world, where a lot of things are possible if you just connect them, if you make them smart. And there are unintended consequences of connecting things, and I'll give you one. Uber started off as people moving people, things moving people, and things moving things. But an unintended consequence of doing that was we have 4 million people looking for work on our platform on a monthly basis. What does that mean? That's a lot of people. And these number of people are only utilized less than 50%. So if there are 40 hours in a week, they're only using this platform less than 20 hours a week. Now, we figured out, what if we generate other networks and hence form this startup within Uber called UberWorks? And this startup is now trying to form a network of consultants, of gardeners, babysitters, of handymen, of gig workers that are, just because you're a driver doesn't mean you don't have other skill sets. So now, can I form a network of all of these other kinds of gig workers? So I'm not in transportation business. I'm also in labor business. And we never intended to be in the labor business. Just because we connected people and now things, we are in a different business. Thank you very much.